1. Alright, let's dive a little deeper into this 1965 Ford Thunderbird. The 65 model year was part of the fourth generation of Thunderbirds, known for their sleek, angular design and luxurious features. This particular car has been around the block a few times, with 99,000 miles on the odometer. That's not surprising for a vehicle that's over half a century old, but it's still worth noting. Now, the seller mentions that the car needs a new paint job. That's not uncommon for a classic car of this age, and it's something to keep in mind if you're considering taking on this project. A fresh coat of paint can do wonders for a car's appearance, but it's also a significant investment of time and money. Under the hood, you'll find a gas-powered engine. The 65 Thunderbird came with a few different engine options, ranging from a 390 Ci V8 to a 428 Ci V8. Without more information from the seller, it's hard to say exactly which engine this particular car has. But regardless of the specific engine, you can expect decent power and performance from a classic Thunderbird. The transmission is automatic, which was a popular choice for the Thunderbird. It makes for a smooth, easy driving experience, even if it might not be as exciting as a manual gearbox for some enthusiasts. One thing that caught my eye in the seller's description is that they drove the car from Lebanon. Now, I'm not sure if they mean Lebanon, Pennsylvania, or Lebanon, Missouri, or maybe even the country of Lebanon. But either way, it's a good sign that the car is in drivable condition. It's always a gamble buying a classic car sight unseen, but knowing that it's been on the road recently is a point in its favor. Of course, there's no way to know the full extent of this Thunderbird's needs without seeing it in person and getting a thorough inspection. But based on the information we have, it seems like a solid starting point for a restoration project. And at $4,500, it's a relatively affordable entry point into the world of classic car ownership. So there you have it, folks. A 1965 Ford Thunderbird with plenty of potential, waiting for the right buyer to come along and give it a new lease on life. It might not be a concours-ready show car, but with some patience, skill, and investment, it could be a really cool cruiser to take out on the weekends. 2. We're checking out a real blast from the past, a 1973 Mercury Montego that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This particular model is the MX Brougham, which was the top-of-the-line trim level back in the day. The seller is asking $3,500 for this classic ride, and from what they've shared, it seems like it could be a solid deal. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as good, which is promising. They mention that it drives and shifts like a new car, which is a big plus for a vehicle that's almost 50 years old. The odometer shows 76,000 miles, which is relatively low for its age. However, as with any classic car, it's important to keep in mind that it may need some work to get it in tip-top shape. Under the hood, you'll find a factory 351 Windsor motor, which is a solid V8 engine known for its power and reliability. The car has an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive, which was pretty standard for American cars of this era. One of the standout features of this Montego is the power windows and power seat. The seller mentions that they've invested $788 in brand new BF Goodrich tires, which is a significant selling point. Having good tires is crucial for both safety and performance, so it's great to know that this car has been upgraded in that regard. Aesthetically, the car sports a yellow paint job, which could be a real head-turner if it's in good condition. The seller doesn't provide any photos, so it's hard to gauge the overall appearance of the car. As with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to see it in person and give it a thorough inspection before making a decision. The seller does mention that the car needs a few things done to it, but they don't go into specifics. They promise to provide more details if asked, which is a good sign that they're being transparent about the car's condition. Overall, this 1973 Mercury Montego MX Brougham seems like it could be a solid project car for the right buyer. It has some desirable features, like the power windows and seat, and the low mileage is definitely a plus. The asking price of $3,500 seems reasonable for a classic car in good condition, but as with any used car purchase, it's important to do your due diligence and get a thorough inspection before making a decision. If you're in the market for a vintage ride with some character, this Montego could be worth checking out. Just be prepared to put in some work to get it in showroom condition. And as always, don't hesitate to ask the seller plenty of questions to get a better sense of the car's history and current state. 3. We've got a real treat for you. A 1984 Lincoln Continental Valentino edition that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This luxurious ride is being offered for just $4,500 or best offer, and the seller is even open to trades. But more on that later. First, let's talk about the car itself. The seller describes the condition as good, and with only 103,000 miles on the odometer, it's clear that this Continental has been well cared for over the years. The gray paint job looks sleek and sophisticated, and the clean title is a big plus for any potential buyer. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide plenty of oomph on the road. The car is rear-wheel drive and runs on gasoline, which is pretty standard for a luxury sedan of this era. The automatic transmission is smooth and easy to operate, making this Continental a great choice for cruising around town or hitting the highway for a weekend getaway. But what really sets this Continental apart is the interior. The seller mentions that it has all-power seats, a digital dash, and a full trip computer. Pretty advanced features for a car from the mid-80s. The soft open and close trunk is a nice touch too, and according to the seller, the car is incredibly comfortable and has a great ride quality that you'd expect from a Lincoln. In fact, they even say that the power steering is so light, you can easily drive the car with just one finger. Talk about effortless driving. Now let's talk about those trade offers. The seller is mostly interested in car or airplane-related trades, which is pretty unique. They mention a few specific makes and models they're interested in, like Studebakers, Packards, Nashes, Hudsons, Kaisers, and Saabs. They're also open to anything from 1970 or older, as well as pre-1990 BMWs and Mercedes, particularly Fintails. But even if you don't have one of those specific vehicles, the seller says they'll consider all trade offers. So if you got something cool and unique, it might be worth reaching out to see if they're interested. Overall, this 1984 Lincoln Continental Valentino edition seems like a real gem. It's got low mileage, a clean title, and some seriously cool features inside and out. Plus, with the seller open to trades, there's some flexibility in how you might be able to make a deal. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to see the vehicle in person and get a thorough inspection before making a decision. But if you're in the market for a classic luxury sedan with some real character, this Continental is definitely worth checking out. 4. We're taking a closer look at a 1969 Pontiac Firebird that's up for grabs on Craigslist in Denver, Colorado. The seller is asking $11,500 for this classic muscle car, and while that might seem like a hefty price tag, there's a lot to unpack here. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller rates it as fair, which is a pretty honest assessment based on the description. This Firebird has been around the block a few times, with the odometer reading 1,000 miles. Now, before you start thinking that's a typo, the seller clarifies that the odometer is broken and has rolled over. So while we don't know the exact mileage, it's safe to say this car has seen its fair share of road time. But don't let that discourage you just yet. The seller notes that the car is very solid overall, with a clean title and minimal rust. The floors and trunk are said to be in good shape, and the seller even has pictures to prove it. There is some surface rust on the driver's side fender and rear quarter panels, but it doesn't appear to be a major issue. Under the hood, you'll find the original 350 Pontiac engine and automatic transmission. The seller says the car runs and drives beautifully as is, with no issues starting up. That's a big plus for any classic car, especially one with this kind of mileage. Now let's talk about the interior. This is where the fair condition rating really comes into play. The car has no headliner or back seat, and the dashboard is cracked. The driver's seat is also torn, which is a common issue with older cars. But on the bright side, the center console is said to be in good shape, and all the glass is intact. Aesthetically, the car has been repainted from its original gold color. The seller doesn't specify what color it is now, but based on the photos, it appears to be a dark blue or black. The paint job looks decent in the pictures, but as with any used car, it's always a good idea to see it in person to get a better sense of the overall condition. Other notable features include power steering and drum brakes all around. The car is being sold as is, which means it's up to the buyer to address any remaining issues or upgrades. Overall, this 1969 Pontiac Firebird seems like a solid project car for the right buyer. It's got a clean title, minimal rust, and a running engine, which are all big pluses. The interior needs some work, but that's to be expected with a car of this age. The asking price of $11,500 might be a bit steep for some buyers, especially given the unknown mileage and fair condition. But for a die-hard Pontiac fan or someone looking for a fun weekend cruiser, it could be a worthwhile investment. 5. We've got a real classic on our hands, a 1965 Ford Mustang Coupe that's up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $14,500 for this iconic pony car, and based on the description, it seems like it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. First off, let's talk about the specs. This Mustang is powered by a 289 V8 engine with a 4-barrel carburetor, which was a popular choice back in the day. The C-code designation means this is a mid-range performance model with a respectable 200 horsepower under the hood. The car has an automatic transmission, which makes it a great choice for cruising around town or hitting the highway. Now, let's talk about the condition. The seller notes that the car has been sitting for a while, which is something to keep in mind. However, they also mention that it starts and runs, which is a good sign. The body is described as straight with no major rust, which is a big plus for a car of this age. The seller also mentions that it's a California car, which could mean it's been spared from some of the harsher weather conditions that can cause rust and other damage. The interior is said to be a clean, pony style, which is a classic look for the Mustang. The seller mentions that the car was restored in the late 90s, which could explain the good condition of the interior. However, it's important to keep in mind that even a well-maintained car of this age may need some additional work to get it in top shape. Aesthetically, the car looks great in the photos. The classic Mustang styling is instantly recognizable, with the long hood and short rear deck. The paint looks shiny, and the chrome appears to be in good condition. Of course, as with any used car, it's always a good idea to see it in person to get a better sense of the overall condition. One thing to note is that the car is currently registered as non-operational, which means it can't be legally driven on the road without going through the proper registration process. This is something to keep in mind if you're planning on using the car as a daily driver. Overall, this 1965 Ford Mustang Coupe seems like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a classic pony car. The V8 engine and automatic transmission make it a great choice for cruising, and the straight body and clean interior are definite pluses. The asking price of $14,500 might be a bit steep for some buyers, but for a well-maintained Mustang of this vintage, it's not unreasonable. 6. We've got a real blast from the past on our hands. A 1965 AMC Rambler American 440h that's up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $8,900 or best offer for this classic compact car, and based on the description, it seems like it could be a fun and unique addition to any collection. First off, let's talk about the specs. This Rambler is powered by a 232 cubic inch straight-six engine, which was a common choice for AMC cars of this era. The torque command designation suggests that this is a higher performance version of the engine, which could make for a more engaging driving experience. The car also has a Flash-O-Matic 3-speed automatic transmission with a column shifter, which was a popular option at the time. Now let's talk about the condition. The seller describes the car as being in good condition, which is always a positive sign. However, it's important to keep in mind that good can mean different things to different people, so it's always a good idea to see the car in person and get a thorough inspection before making a decision. The odometer reading of 58,000 miles is relatively low for a car of this age, which could be a good sign. However, it's also possible that the odometer has rolled over or been replaced at some point, so it's important to verify the actual mileage with the seller. Aesthetically, the Rambler American has a classic 1960s look with clean lines and a boxy profile. The 440h model was the top-of-the-line trim level for the American, so it likely has some additional features and upgrades compared to the base model. The seller doesn't provide any photos with the listing, so it's hard to get a sense of the car's overall appearance. However, if the car is truly in good condition as described, it could be a real head-turner at car shows and events. One thing to consider with a car like this is parts availability. While AMC cars have a dedicated following, they're not as common as some other classic American brands like Ford or Chevrolet. This means that finding replacement parts or making repairs could be more challenging and expensive than with a more mainstream classic car. Overall, this 1965 AMC Rambler American 440h seems like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a unique and fun classic car. The straight-six engine and automatic transmission make it a great choice for cruising, and the good condition description is promising. The asking price of $8,900 or best offer might be a bit steep for some buyers, but for a well-maintained Rambler of this vintage, it's not unreasonable. 7. We've got a real gem on our hands, a 1984 Pontiac Firebird that's up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking just $5,000 for this classic sports car, and based on the description, it seems like an absolute steal. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller describes it as excellent, which is a huge plus for any car that's almost 40 years old. It's clear that this Firebird has been well maintained over the years, and the low odometer reading of just 55,261 miles backs that up. This car has plenty of life left in it, and it's ready for its next owner to enjoy. Under the hood, you'll find a 305 cubic inch V8 engine that's sure to provide plenty of power and performance. The automatic transmission with overdrive makes for smooth and efficient cruising, whether you're hitting the highway or just running errands around town. Now, let's talk about the features. This Firebird comes loaded with options, including power steering, power brakes, and cruise control. The AC does need some work, but that's a relatively minor issue that can be easily addressed. The AM/FM cassette stereo is a nice touch for those who appreciate a bit of vintage tech, and the cloth interior looks to be in great shape based on the photos. But the real standout feature of this Firebird has to be the glass T-tops. These removable roof panels let you enjoy the sunshine and fresh air while still providing the comfort and security of a hardtop. And with the rear window, defroster and spoiler, this car looks just as good as it drives. Aesthetically, the Firebird has always been a head-turner, and this '84 model is no exception. The classic lines and aggressive stance are sure to turn heads wherever you go, and the overall condition of the car is a testament to the care and attention it's received over the years. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to get a thorough inspection before making a decision. But based on the information provided by the seller, this 1984 Pontiac Firebird seems like an absolute bargain at just $5,000. So if you're in the market for a classic sports car with plenty of style and performance, this Firebird is definitely worth a closer look. With its excellent condition, low mileage, and long list of features, it's sure to provide years of driving enjoyment for its lucky new owner. 8. We've got a real piece of American automotive history on our hands, a 1965 Ford Falcon that's up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $11,000 for this classic compact car, but before you start reaching for your wallet, let's take a closer look at what we're dealing with here. First off, the good news. This Falcon comes with a factory 289 V8 engine, which is a real plus for anyone looking for some serious power under the hood. The car also has an automatic transmission, which makes it a great choice for cruising around town or hitting the highway. But here's where things start to get a little dicey. The seller mentions that the car has been sitting for 2.5 to 3 years, and as a result, it currently does not run. The culprit is likely the old gas and a carburetor that needs rebuilding, which is a common issue with cars that have been sitting for a while. Now, I've got to be honest with you, this is a bit of a red flag for me. While the 289 V8 is a great engine, it's not going to do you much good if the car won't start. And while a carburetor rebuild is a relatively straightforward job for an experienced mechanic, it's still an added expense and hassle that potential buyers will need to factor into their decision. The seller does mention that they have manuals and records for the car, which is a plus. And the odometer reading of 100,000 miles is relatively low for a car of this age, although it's worth noting that the actual mileage may be higher if the odometer has rolled over. Aesthetically, the Falcon has a classic 1960s look that's sure to turn heads. But without seeing the car in person or getting more detailed photos, it's hard to say exactly what kind of shape it's in. The seller doesn't provide any information about the condition of the body, interior, or other key components. So, where does that leave us? Well, it's tough to say for sure without more information. On one hand, the 289 V8 and low mileage are definitely appealing. And for the right buyer who's willing to put in the work to get this car back on the road, it could be a really cool project. But on the other hand, the fact that the car hasn't run in years and needs some significant work is a definite drawback. And at $11,000, the asking price feels a bit steep for a car that's essentially a non-running project. 9. We've got a real classic on our hands, a 1959 Ford Thunderbird that's up for grabs on Craigslist. The seller is asking $13,000 for this iconic piece of American automotive history, and based on the description, it seems like it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller describes it as good, which is a promising start. They mention that the car has been in the family its whole life and is a dry survivor with minimal to no rust. That's a huge plus for any classic car, especially one that's over 60 years old. Under the hood, you'll find a V8 engine that's been treated to a host of new parts, including a new carburetor, timing chain, water pump, fuel pump, push rods, lifters, and more. The seller also mentions a new alternator, points, cap, rotor, plugs, and wires, which suggests that the electrical system has been given some attention as well. With a new battery and starter, this T-Bird should be ready to fire up and hit the road. The seller also notes that the car has a new aluminum radiator, which is a great upgrade for any classic car. The new brake lines and mufflers are also welcome additions that should help with safety and performance. Now let's talk about the exterior. The seller mentions that there are no major dents, which is great news. They also note that all the trim and windows are in great shape, which can be a challenge to find on a car of this age. The paint color is described as custom, so it's unclear exactly what shade it is, but based on the photos, it looks to be a classic white or off-white. One really cool feature of this T-Bird is the new set of Coker white wall tires. These vintage-style tires are a perfect match for the car's classic look, and the seller mentions that they have no miles on them, which means they should last for quite a while. Moving on to the interior, there are a few things to note. The power driver's seat is said to work, which is a nice touch. However, the air conditioning and power windows are not currently functioning, which is something to keep in mind if you're looking for a fully loaded classic. The seller also mentions that the car needs a new dash pad and carpet, which are relatively minor issues that can be addressed down the line. Overall, this 1959 Ford Thunderbird seems like a solid project car for someone who's willing to put in a little work to get it in top shape. The asking price of $13,000 might be a bit steep for some buyers, but considering the car's rarity and the number of new parts that have been installed, it's not an unreasonable asking price. 10. We're taking a closer look at a classic 1977 Ford Maverick that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This black beauty is priced at $5,500 and comes with a clean title and tags that are paid up until April 2025. That's one less thing to worry about. Now let's dive into the details. Under the hood, you'll find a 250 inline-six engine that's paired with an automatic transmission. The seller has put in some work, rebuilding the carburetor, although it still needs tuning, and replacing the evaporator core, spark plug wires, distributor cap, and rear fuel line. That's a good start to ensuring this Maverick runs smoothly. The interior has been modified, with the original seats removed and replaced with a single black bucket seat. But don't worry, the seller is including the original rear bench seat in black, so you have options for your ideal setup. Plus, the radio is working, and brand new speakers have been installed, so you can cruise to your favorite tunes. Aesthetically, the entire floor pan has been sanded, degreased, and coated with Rust-Oleum stop primer before being painted black. The Craigslist wheels on all four corners have been sanded down and coated with VHT wheel paint in a sleek graphite color, adding to the car's overall look. The seller mentions that the Maverick is running and can be driven home, but it will need some minor work to be in top shape. They're upfront about the need for a new radiator, hoses, potentially a water pump, brakes, and the brake master cylinder. Additionally, the gas gauge and odometer need to be fixed, with the current mileage reading 229,660. While the seller states the condition as good, it's important to note that this Maverick does require some repairs and improvements. However, they seem to be transparent about the car's needs, which is a good sign for potential buyers. Overall, this 1977 Ford Maverick presents an opportunity for someone looking for a classic car project that's not too overwhelming. With some TLC and the right repairs, this Maverick could be a real head-turner on the road. If you're up for a bit of a project and have a soft spot for classic American cars, this might be the ride for you. 11. We've got a real treat for you. A 1969 Chevrolet Camaro convertible that's looking for a new home. This vintage beauty is up for grabs on Craigslist for just $11,900, and it comes with a clean title. But before you get too excited, let's take a closer look at what this Camaro has to offer. Under the hood, you'll find a 5.0-liter V8 engine paired with a turbo 350 automatic transmission. It's got a 10-bolt rear differential, power brakes, front disc and rear drum, power steering, dual exhaust, and a transmission cooler. Sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, here's the catch. The seller is upfront about the fact that this Camaro is a bring a trailer or tow truck sale. In other words, it needs a lot of work. The body needs some serious attention, with lower quarter panels needing to be sectioned in at the front lower section and jam. The left quarter panel needs repair at the rear, and at least a section of the trunk floor needs replacement. The right fender needs repair or replacement. The left fender needs some work, and both doors need repairs too. Oh, and there's also some repair needed at the windshield lower left dash cowl area. But wait, there's more. The convertible top needs to be replaced with a new one, including padding, and the whole car needs a complete paint job. Mechanically, the Camaro needs a new fuel tank, a flush fuel line, a new battery, and radiator repair. The turbo 350 transmission needs an input shaft seal, and a new set of rubber wouldn't hurt either. Moving on to the interior, the carpet needs to be re-dyed or replaced, and both door panels could use a refresh. The black dash top area will need refinishing after repairs at the windshield lower left area. The original front seats are included, but the driver's seat bottom needs to be repaired due to a tear. It's worth noting that the custom front seats and rear speakers shown in the photos are not included with the sale. Now let's be real here. This Camaro is not for the faint of heart. It's a project car that requires someone with mechanical, MIG welding, sectioning, bodywork, and refinishing experience, or someone with cost-effective connections to take care of the repairs. The seller rates the condition as fair, but it's clear that this car needs a lot of love and attention to bring it back to its former glory. 12. We've got a real gem for you, a 1976 Chevrolet Corvette that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic beauty is priced at just $12,000 and comes with a clean title. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, but let's take a closer look and see what this Feta has to offer. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 350 engine paired with a manual transmission, which is sure to put a smile on the face of any enthusiast who loves to row their own gears. The seller mentions that the car has recently undergone a tune-up and oil change, so it should be running smoothly and ready to hit the road. The odometer shows 114,000 miles, which is relatively low for a car of this age. The seller states that there are no mechanical issues, which is always a good sign. It's also worth noting that the T-top doesn't have any leaks, and the wipers and headlights are in working order. However, the clock doesn't work, but that's a minor issue that can be easily fixed. Now let's talk about the exterior. The seller mentions that the paint job looks good from a distance, but there are some faults when seen up close. This is something to keep in mind if you're looking for a show-quality Corvette. However, if you're just looking for a classic car to enjoy on weekend drives, this may not be a deal-breaker. The car also comes with an extra set of aluminum wheels, which is a nice bonus. Overall, this 1976 Chevrolet Corvette seems to be in good condition, especially considering its age. The seller's description paints a picture of a well-maintained classic car that's ready to be enjoyed by its next owner. However, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to inspect the vehicle in person and take it for a test drive before making a final decision. If you're in the market for a classic Corvette that won't break the bank, this 1976 model might be worth checking out. With its powerful 350 engine, manual transmission, and relatively low mileage, it could be a great addition to any enthusiast's garage. Just be sure to take a closer look at that paint job before making an offer. 13. We've got a real treat for you. A 1970 Ford Ranchero that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This fifth-generation Squire two-door pickup is priced at just $7,900 and comes with a clean title and P&O, planned non-operation California plates. The seller claims it's in good condition. But let's dive in and see what this classic Ranchero has to offer. Under the hood, you'll find a running 302 V8 engine paired with a C4 automatic transmission. This combination should provide plenty of power and smooth shifting for cruising around town or hitting the highway. The seller mentions that the car has its original miles, which is always a plus for collectors and enthusiasts. The exterior of this Ranchero is finished in a sleek blue color and sits on a set of matching 4 racing wheel rims. These sport racing wheels give the car a unique and aggressive look that's sure to turn heads wherever you go. The seller notes that there's no rust or accidents, which is great news for anyone looking for a solid project car. Moving on to the interior, the seller describes it as clean and finished in black. It's always nice to see a well-maintained interior, especially in a classic car like this. The seller also mentions that there are lots of new parts to be listed, which could be a bonus for anyone looking to restore or upgrade this Ranchero. However, it's important to note that the seller does mention some areas that need attention. The car needs an electrical signal switch and wiring, which could be a bit of a project for someone with electrical experience. But if you're up for a little bit of work, this could be a great opportunity to get your hands on a classic Ranchero at a reasonable price. One of the best things about this Ranchero is that it's exempt from smog testing, which can be a real hassle for older cars in California. The seller also mentions that they're not interested in trades or scams, so be prepared to pay cash if you're serious about taking this beauty home. Overall, this 1970 Ford Ranchero seems to be a solid project car for someone who's looking for a classic pickup with plenty of potential. With its running 302 V8 engine, clean interior, and rust-free body, it could be a great starting point for a restoration or a fun weekend cruiser. Just be prepared to put in a little bit of work on the electrical system, and you could have a real gem on your hands. If you're interested, be sure to reach out to the seller and schedule a time to check it out in person. 14. We've got a real head-turner for you, a 1975 Pontiac Lehman's that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This stunning coupe is priced at $10,000 and comes with a clean title. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, but let's take a closer look and see what this Lehman's has to offer. First off, let's talk about that eye-catching exterior. The car is finished in a gorgeous candy magenta color that's sure to make a statement wherever you go. The seller mentions that they purchased the car last summer and only drove it about 10 miles before encountering some mechanical issues. But more on that later. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine paired with a manual transmission, which is sure to put a smile on the face of any enthusiast who loves to row their own gears. The odometer shows just 95,000 miles, which is relatively low for a car of this age. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: the mechanical issues. The seller mentions that they heard a clanking noise coming from the engine and decided to shut it down, thinking it was something serious. They had the car towed to a mechanic who was able to get it running and sounding amazing. The mechanic pointed out that the issue was related to the rocker arms needing adjustment. However, when the first potential buyer took the car for a test drive, the noise returned, albeit not as severe as before. It's important to note that while the seller believes the engine is fine, based on how good it sounds, they do acknowledge that the car needs some wrenching. This is not a catastrophic issue, but it's something to keep in mind if you're considering making an offer. The seller is ready to entertain offers but is not interested in trades. They mention that this is an opportunity to get into a show car for cheap, which could be a great deal for someone who's willing to put in a little bit of work. Overall, this 1975 Pontiac Lehman's seems to be a solid car with a lot of potential. The stunning candy magenta exterior is sure to turn heads, and the manual transmission paired with the 8-cylinder engine is a dream combo for many enthusiasts. While the mechanical issues may be a concern for some, they don't appear to be catastrophic, and could be a relatively easy fix for someone with the right skills and knowledge. 15. We've got a real treat for you, a 1979 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This luxurious 4-door sedan is priced at just $7,150 and comes with a clean title. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, but let's take a closer look and see what this classic caddy has to offer. First off, let's talk about the mileage. This Fleetwood has just 97,769 miles on the odometer, which is relatively low for a car that's over 40 years old. The seller mentions that it's been stored in a garage for years, which is always a good sign when it comes to classic cars. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide a smooth and comfortable ride. The seller notes that the car runs great and even has a new battery, so you shouldn't have any trouble firing it up and hitting the road. Now, let's talk about the exterior. The baby blue paint is described as nice and shiny, which is always a plus for a classic car. The roof vinyl is in good condition with no cracks, although there is a spot of black dried tree sap that will need to be removed with some care. There are a couple of scratches on the body, specifically on the right front fender and a small scratch on the hood, but these have been taken into consideration for the price. Moving on to the interior, the seller notes that the headliner is in good condition, and the leather interior and dashboard are also in good shape. The power windows, power trunk, and interior lights all work, which is great to see in a car of this age. The car even comes with its original manual and an official Cadillac 8-track player with cassette and CB radio, which are sure to be a hit with any classic car enthusiast. However, it's important to note that there are a couple of issues with the car that potential buyers should be aware of. The steering column has been cut into and has some back and forth play, which is something that will need to be addressed. Additionally, the front passenger power window control is loose and possibly an incorrect model, although it still works. Overall, this 1979 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham seems to be a solid classic car with a lot of potential. The low mileage, garage storage, and excellent condition of the paint and interior are all big pluses. While there are a couple of issues that will need to be addressed, they have been taken into consideration for the price and shouldn't be deal breakers for someone who's willing to put in a little bit of work. 16. We've got a real gem for you, a 1977 Chevy Nova that's looking for its third owner. This beauty is up for grabs on Craigslist for just $4,300, and it comes with a clean title. The seller claims it's in good condition, but let's take a closer look and see what this classic Chevy has to offer. First off, let's talk about the mileage. The odometer shows 147,155 miles, but the seller notes that it has rolled over, so the actual mileage is likely higher. However, this is still an impressive number for a car that's over 40 years old, and it's a testament to the durability of these classic Chevys. Under the hood, you'll find a straight-six engine that's sure to provide plenty of power for cruising around town or hitting the highway. However, the seller does mention that the heads, carburetor, and radiator need to be repaired or replaced, so that's something to keep in mind if you're considering making an offer. Now, let's talk about the exterior. The seller describes the body as straight with a few minor flaws, but nothing major. The car comes with custom rims that are sure to turn heads, but they do need to be cleaned up. The seller also notes that the car needs all new tires, so that's another expense to factor into your budget. Moving on to the interior, the seller mentions that the car comes with a Kenwood removable stereo and is wired for back speakers, which is a nice touch. However, there are no photos of the interior included in the ad, so it's hard to say what condition it's in. Overall, this 1977 Chevy Nova seems to be a solid classic car with a lot of potential. The straight six engine and custom rims are definitely selling points, and the fact that it's only had 2 owners is a good sign. However, it's important to keep in mind that the car does need some work, particularly with the engine and tires. If you're in the market for a classic Chevy that's sure to turn heads and has a lot of potential for restoration, this 1977 Nova might be worth checking out. Just be prepared to put in some work and money to get it running and looking its best. The seller is asking for serious inquiries only, so if you're interested, be sure to reach out and schedule a time to see the car in person. 17. We've got a real treat for you. A 1969 Lincoln Continental that's been hiding out in a chicken barn for the past decade. This iconic car with its famous suicide doors is up for grabs on Craigslist for $9,500 or best offer, and it comes with a clean California title and current non-op registration. Now, before we get too excited, let's address the elephant in the room. The seller rates the condition of this Continental as fair, which is understandable considering its lengthy stay in a barn. However, they also mention that the car is in excellent condition considering its history, so there's definitely some potential here. Under the hood, you'll find an 8-cylinder engine that cranks but doesn't start. This is a common issue with barn finds, and it's likely that the car will need some mechanical work to get it up and running again. However, the seller notes that the car is complete, which is a big plus for anyone looking to take on a restoration project. Moving on to the exterior, the seller doesn't provide much detail about the condition of the paint or body, but they do mention that all the trim and emblems are present. The only thing missing that they've noticed is the door panel covers for the ashtrays, which is a relatively minor issue. Now let's talk about the interior. The seller describes the interior and dash as being in excellent condition, which is impressive for a car that's been sitting for so long. The photos provided in the ad would definitely help potential buyers get a better sense of the interior's condition. Overall, this 1969 Lincoln Continental seems to be a solid barn find with a lot of potential. While it's not a turnkey car that's ready to hit the road, it's a complete vehicle with an excellent interior and all its trim and emblems intact. The suicide doors are definitely a selling point for collectors and enthusiasts, and the fact that it comes with a clean title and current registration is a big plus. If you're in the market for a classic Lincoln that's ready for a restoration project, this 1969 Continental might be worth checking out. Just be prepared to put in some work to get it running and roadworthy again. The seller is asking $9,500 or best offer, so there may be some room for negotiation. So 18. We've got a real piece of American automotive history for you. A 1963 Ford Thunderbird that's been in the same family since it rolled off the assembly line. This third-generation T-Bird is up for grabs on Craigslist for $11,000, and it comes with a clean title in hand. First off, let's talk about the mileage. The seller estimates that the car has around 177,000 miles on the odometer, but they also mention that it's possible the odometer hasn't rolled over. So, while the exact mileage is unclear, it's safe to say that this T-Bird has seen its fair share of the open road. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide plenty of get up and go. The seller notes that the car starts and runs, which is always a good sign for a classic vehicle. However, they do mention that the car needs a brake booster and that some of the lights aren't working, so those are issues that will need to be addressed. Moving on to the exterior, the seller doesn't provide much detail about the condition of the paint or body, but they do mention that the car needs a detailing. The photos provided in the ad would definitely help potential buyers get a better sense of the car's overall condition. Now, let's talk about the interior. Again, the seller doesn't go into much detail here, but they do note that the car has been in the same family since 1963. This could be a good sign, as it suggests that the car has been well loved and cared for over the years. It's worth noting that the seller is pretty clear about the fact that they want the car out of their driveway. They're not interested in any trades, and they're only accepting a cashier's check or cash for payment. This suggests that they're motivated to sell, which could be a good thing for potential buyers. Overall, this 1963 Ford Thunderbird seems to be a solid classic car with a lot of history behind it. While it does need some work, particularly with the brakes and lights, it's a running vehicle with a clean title. The fact that it's been in the same family for so long is definitely a selling point, as it suggests that the car has been well maintained over the years. 19. We've got a real diamond in the rough for you, a 1966 Dodge Coronet that's in need of some serious TLC. This four-door sedan with the 440 trim package is up for grabs on Craigslist for just $2,650, and it comes with current California registration that's been renewed for another year. Now let's be real here. The seller rates the condition of this Coronet as fair, and based on the description, that might be a bit generous. The car was a weekend driver until 2019, when it was parked in a backyard. The current owner found it about a year ago and purchased it a few months back with the intention of restoring it. However, they don't have a garage, and this is definitely a garage-needed project. Under the hood, you'll find a 273 cubic inch V8 engine with a 2-barrel carburetor. The seller has replaced the fuel pump and ignition resistor, but they haven't gone through the brakes and suspension yet. The car will also need new tires. Moving on to the exterior, the seller notes that the car has some rust at the pillars and that it was repainted at some point, but the paint is now faded. The photos provided in the ad would definitely help potential buyers get a better sense of the extent of the rust and the overall condition of the body. Now, here's where things get a bit concerning. The seller recently updated the ad to say that while the car seems to run well, they were told it needs a water pump. They also mentioned that it may need the engine gone through, and one person who looked at it thought it might need a head gasket, as there was some water in the oil. Yikes. Despite these issues, the seller seems to be torn about what to do with the car. They're asking $2,650 or best offer, but they're also considering doing the water pump and tires themselves and raising the price back up to $5,150. They say they'd love to pass the project on to someone who could handle it, but they're also starting to want to finish the car themselves. Overall, this 1966 Dodge Coronet seems to be a project car that's not for the faint of heart. While it's got some cool features, like the 440 trim package and the V8 engine, it's also got some serious issues that will need to be addressed. The rust, the faded paint, and the potential engine problems are all red flags that potential buyers should take into consideration. 20. Let me tell you about this absolute gem I stumbled upon on Craigslist, a 1977 Chevrolet Corvette that's currently up for grabs at $11,000. Now I gotta be real with you guys. This Vette is a project, but man, it's got some serious potential. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, and while it does need a bit of TLC, it sounds like they've put a ton of work into it already. We're talking a brand new 406 cubic inch engine build, chrome side pipes that'll make your neighbors jealous, fresh wheels, and a whole lot more. This blue beauty is sporting an automatic transmission, rear-wheel drive, and has only 50,000 miles on the clock. The sellers invested a whopping $20,000 into this bad boy, which includes a new rear differential, interior overhaul, suspension upgrades, radiator, transmission, windshield, and brakes. Now here's the kicker. It needs a new flywheel and has to be towed. But don't let that scare you off. The sellers got video proof of this beast running, and they say it runs excellently. Plus, they're throwing in a 1985 Jaguar XJS with a small block Chevy engine as part of the deal. Talk about a 2-for-1 special. Look, I know $11,000 might seem steep for a car that needs to be towed, but with all the work that's been done, and that Jag sweetening the pot, this could be an incredible opportunity for the right buyer. The seller's moving and needs to liquidate their toys, so there might even be room for negotiation. If you're in the market for a classic Corvette project with a ton of potential and a bonus Jag to boot, this might just be the deal you've been waiting for.